Now here's an interesting one. This was the premiere of the long version of the film on home video, and there are several versions of this. This is Martin Scorsese's New York, New York. It's definitely the ill-fated attempt at invoking not only the classic musical, or I guess you should say more of like the classic, just classic musicals in general. It's really a product of its time. Some people label it as being of, the excesses of the hot, young, successful film brats in the 70s, and, then their glorious failures after their glorious debuts. It's interesting. I mean, I'm not really a musical person, but it's definitely a flawed, large, expensive film, and you can really see how it didn't connect with an audience because, there's not a lot of likable characters. It's not like there's a whole lot of story to fill a longer film because this is a longer film. But anyway, it was cut down, I think, to somewhere closer around 2 hours, and there's several different editions of this. Now, it's mounted with a lot of time and care. If you're at all into musicals, you would definitely get something out of it. If you're into studying the 70s in terms of film history, absolutely, or the career of Scorsese, De Niro, Liza Minnelli, definitely. The photography, the choreography is absolutely fantastic. So there are some things to watch this for. Now, this is a full CAV release, which is quite nice. Again, it was not very common, especially for older catalog films, to get a full deluxe CAV treatment. Now, I don't really think every single side of this had to be CAV, but if anybody's going to do full CAV, I'm fine. It could be on anything, and I'll be happy, just because it was so uncommon. Now, of course, it's advertised as being letterboxed and being the original uncut version with a director's commentary. So if you choose, you can switch over to the analog track and listen to Marty Scorsese go on and on and on and on and on and on and on about how perhaps some of these things were not good ideas and some of things should have not been cut out by the studio and perhaps people should have not been doing so much cocaine. Sorry, I couldn't help it. Anyway, it's a pretty nice jacket, I would say. It's actually an MGM release, which you can tell by the usage of an image across the top banner with a critical blurb, and then the sort of just generic background color, and then your text on top of that. So they kind of always stuck with this sort of broken up, I guess broken up formatting would be the best way to put it. And it actually kind of works. It reminds you of the fact that this is a widescreen transfer. Now, again, this was really the premiere of the longer version of the film, and it runs about pretty close to 3 hours. It runs 2 hours, 47 minutes. And like I said, the theatrical release, I think, cut it down closer to like 2:20 or 2:15. And this has since been released on DVD, and I think there's actually 2 or 3 different DVD versions. I think one released the theatrical cut, then one released the longer cut on here, but I don't think it had all the extras. And then I think they finally did another one that had the extras, but I can't remember I think it's missing something, because why have one definitive release when you can have 15 that are not definitive? And I don't think it's come to Blu-ray yet, at least if I'm not mistaken. I can't remember, or it did, and it's missing some extras. In any case, you kind of have to piecemeal between different ones to actually get all the various extras and things. This does carry a Dolby Surround encoded soundtrack, which is the original mix. A lot of the later releases have a 5.1 remix, which, again, probably isn't going to change very much, but why mess with the original when you don't have to? Now, so that's on your digital tracks, and then you get the director's commentary on the analog left track, and in a nice touch, they isolated the music on the analog right channel. So if you like the music, you can listen to the isolated score on the analog track. Now, you get a custom insert, which is really, really nice. You can tell a lot of love and attention to detail went into this, because before this Laserdisc set, this film really had not gotten any sort of, any real appreciation. And here is the insert, basically giving you some background detail on the film. Nice style, a lot more classy than usual MGM box sets. And then you get your technical notes, which, yeah, the technical notes go into the fact that this was a digital master in the 1:6:6 aspect ratio, which was the original and intended way to see this, and that's what's been maintained on most later releases. Again, 1:6:6 is more of a European standard. Here in the States, we used to have 1:8:5 during the days of film. So that in and of itself is some type of small battle one. And then it was, that was done from, this transfer is done from the master and a positive, and then the original 3-track magnetic sound master was used for the sound transfer. Laszlo Kovacs, the cinematographer, supervised the picture transfer. And then after the film is a collection of deleted sequences of some various interviews, and then the original trailers and some production stills, and then actually at least, well, it says the original shooting script. I can't remember. I think it's significant portions. I can't remember if it's actually indeed the entirety. And it very may well be. It's been a while since I've scrubbed through this, but you get your chapter breakdown here. The film goes right on to 7 sides, pretty much, and then it trails off into the trailers, and then some outtakes, production stills, and then side 8 has some interviews, and then ends with the actual screenplay in still form. So again, a lot of attention to detail, a lot of love and care went into this. And this was really when New York started to get more of a reappreciation in terms of film circles. And the actual discs themselves just have the usual yellow MGM banner. Nice brand new sleeves. This was in really good shape. And because it's so many discs, it's a thicker box, so you can usually find it in pretty good shape, because the thicker boxes were designed to carry more discs, and so the corners don't go as fast. But anyway, a really, really nice package, and just one of those sets for an underappreciated film that they really tried to kind of resurrect it in a lot of ways. And then also, I forgot to mention, it has this little deluxe collector's edition banner with a reel can. Why that's there, I don't know. Usually MGM would have a gold bar across the top or something, but I don't even know if they use that again. But anyway, that's just an interesting oddity on the packaging. Really nice set. Here is the pretty common box of Nixon, the Oliver Stone film. Widescreen, of course, and has the Dolby Surround AC3 digital sticker. I always like how they always stuck with Dolby Surround and then put AC3 digital underneath it, since most people still at this time would not have AC3 in their homes. Now, this is a relatively common set. It's, again, another Disney disc in disguise, seeing as it's one of their subsidiaries, and it's a longer version of the film as well. You see the usual Disney stylings of text down here. You get a ton of supplemental material, all starting on side 5. Basically, a bunch of interviews with Oliver Stone, and then just all kinds of behind-the-scenes material and such on an entire side. So that's really what makes this a box. I don't really know if they had to make this a box set to begin with, but I'm not gonna be that picky. It's the same kind of nice slip box that the later Disney sets got. So like the Sleeping Beauty or Hunchback set from earlier, try and slot this out. Nothing really fancy in here, but you do get a nice thank you card from Buena Vista Home Video saying, "Are you interested in Nixon? Well, you purchased it. Well, what else might you be interested in? Please return this." Since this is business reply mail, I'm kind of curious if I filled this out, if I'd actually get a return notice filled with questions like, do you also own a VCR? For whom was this Laserdisc purchased? What did you pay for this Laserdisc? What Laserdisc store did you go to? I'll be very interested to see if I got a response. Anyway, nothing fancy inside other than the discs themselves. You get a semi-exclusive logo with the film's title printed on it. Standard sleeves. Again, each disc is just separated by a foam insert. Like I said before, there's no real reason this had to be a box set. They could have gone with a trifold or, you know, added a booklet or something, but as it is, you know, it's a nice presentation of the film, and you get a box set for having a box set, I guess. So the only trouble is with all this foam, it doesn't want to go in or out of the box itself. It's kind of very tightly packaged in there. Get my all-important questionnaire back in here, because I'm sure it would just be a waste of time to send that off. I don't know, maybe if I send it off, they'll send me all their old stock of Laserdiscs, particularly all of the ones of their films that they later destroyed in HD. I'm not bitter. Now we're going to go into the box sets of Spielberg titles that I have. This is one of the great boxes that everybody should go out of their way to pick up. There's two variants. This is the big limited version that's the harder to find. Of course, this is the signature release of Jaws from Universal, and what makes this special is that it includes the soundtrack and the actual Peter Benchley original novel in paperback form. That's why the box is a little thicker. The reissue box is just a little slimmed down, and it has the film transfer, some of the extras, and I think the only other difference is I think it goes from this release being full CAV. I think that release has some CLV sides. I think they slimmed it down a little bit that way too. Now, let me show you the rear cover. Really nice looking, and this was all pretty much the same art that was reused on a lot of various Jaws DVD and VHS releases. But this goes into the extras, which includes outtakes, theatrical trailer, storyboard comparison, but the big, and I mean big, part is the complete documentary on the making of the film, which is still to date one of the great making ofs. It's feature length, and in other DVD releases it was actually cut down from its original feature length runtime, which was later restored on the DVD reissues and such. So, but it is really great, and even if you've never seen the film before, you'd get something out of it. It's one of the great making of documentaries. Even to this day, it still holds up. Despite the fan documentaries and so on and so forth, there's still tons of great material in there, so you should definitely see that. Even if you don't have this, you can watch it on one of the DVDs with the full version. Now, it does get the THX stamp, although again I don't really know what they would have done. What's also important about this is it does have the film's original mono mix, which is very historically important because this was at the time where mono was starting to get near the end of its lifetime, and when they had really perfected the art of mono mixing. The mono mix for this film is, as far as I'm concerned, one of the best ever done for single channel film mixing. It's a fantastic mix, and it's the only way you should watch the film. It absolutely destroys all of the remixes, particularly the horrendous 5.1 DVD track with all of the replaced sound effects. When they remixed it for the Blu-ray again, they did a 7.1 mix that thankfully is a little bit more respectful, but it still is crap. To be quite frank, it's crap. The film was intended for mono. It should be heard mono, and it's a real, as far as I'm concerned, it's an insult to not have the mono, and it was really missing for a long time. Now, earlier releases, including the 91 letterbox release that I have, replace certain sections of background music. Particularly, it's really in the beach sequence where there's a radio playing somewhere and it's playing some background music. Well, Universal for a while in the early 90s didn't want to pay licensing fees for ancillary tracks like that. And so there were quite a number of releases from all different eras that would have that dreaded little some music rescored for home video or special home video rescored version. And all that meant was Somebody somewhere realized that they didn't have the rights in perpetuity for some of these incidental music pieces, and then instead of paying up, Universal just decided to replace them with some random music in the background. And most of the time you wouldn't know unless you were a huge fan of the film or you had a different copy with the original audio still intact. But when they would do this, sometimes they would go into the original dialogue, music, and effects stems to mix in the new audio, and sometimes that would cause issues or different balances and stuff. So if you compare the audio of the earlier Letterboxd release to this, you are going to notice there are some differences in levels because of that. So this was really the premiere of the mono mix coming back untouched, and some people argue that it's still the best presentation of the mono mix, even though the mono's on later DVDs and the Blu-ray and lossy quality. Well, I take that back. The Blu-ray has a standard definition DTS mono track, so it's like a 755 kilobits per second. So it's good. But some people say, and they're probably right, they've pointed out that there's some EQ rebalancing that may have gone on the later tracks. So do keep that in mind. Now, as far as this actual box goes, slip this off. And what else are you going to use for the insert but the key art? And again, just beautifully printed. Here you have stills from the film, and you have Spielberg's autograph here. This was all reprinted for the, let's see, I think it's the 35th anniversary DVD set. If you got the limited box version like I did, that was the first DVD that had the long version of the documentary and the mono track. And here's the chapter listing. And of course, you get the full width of Bruce breaking the surface across the gatefold. And here you have the credits for the supplementals, and then kind of describing some of the interviewees for the documentary. And then the making of starts on side 6 and goes through side 7 and then into side 8, which then concludes with the other various bits and pieces. And what's actually quite interesting is, oh, that's just a beautiful shot. I presume that's from the inside of either Ben Gardner's boat or something, but that's just a lovely image to put on the back here. Most jackets won't even have anything on the back. But what I was saying is like the outtakes, for example, are still being recycled from this Laserdisc transfer, even on the Blu-ray. So why they didn't rescan those in HD along with the other materials that are still recycled from this, I don't know. Now, the discs themselves are standard Universal labels, but they are colored a sort of blue with red, so I guess that's like blood in the water, unless I'm just really darkly natured. Now you get the full film on CAV, and when you lift all the discs out, and there'll be a lot of discs in here. You lift up your foam insert, and here you have your tray with the soundtrack release. Now this is just the standard MCA 90s reissue of the score. So it's a analog recording, analog mastering, and digital transfer, the AAD on there. Of course, as many fans know, this is from the original soundtrack release, which was a re-recording and not the music actually heard in the film. That wouldn't be released until I think about 2000 on a CD reissue. And since then, I can't remember, one of the major soundtrack reissue labels did a new issue with both versions, and it's been newly remastered. So that's the one you want to track down. I think it was Entrada who did. So, and here you get the Peter Benchley original novel, which is still a great read. Very different in a lot of ways, especially in tone. It's much darker, but it does give you a lot of great background. If you're a huge fan of the film, you've never read the book, definitely do so. I think Benchley was an underrated writer. But and this was actually the copy, the exact copy I had as a kid. So it was nice to get a minty one. I've always loved this cover. I just love the positioning, the blood red embossing color, and actually the shark teeth and eye are actually embossed as well. So just a nice touch. It'd be really nice if more movie releases actually included the original novel, so then you could keep playing the age-old game of which is actually better. Now, the other thing to discuss is that with a lot of these new reissues of Spielberg films in HD and new scans, there have been suggestions of tweaks that have been made digitally, or new color timing or remixing of the sound. With Jaws, it's a great new transfer, but some people have had some issue with some of the color timing, and there were a couple shots where they went in and digitally removed some ships that were visible on the very, very horizon, because it was supposed to be, an open sea in the middle of nowhere. So while I can understand that, it's just like Raiders of the Lost Ark, where I really wish they would have just left stuff alone. It was there for decades. It didn't need to be touched. So again, do keep that in mind. If you want the film as originally seen, you do need to hang on to an older copy for issues like that. So really, you want to seek either this version or the slimmed down version out for definitely the best transfer on Laserdisc, much better than the older letterbox one, and probably the best rendition of the original mono in PCM. And if you've never heard the mono track for this film, you do yourself a favor. You're going to love it. It's better than all the remixes. And you get the wonderful, wonderful making of documentary that's literally just chock full of information, in addition to the soundtrack and the Benchley novel. So a great, great set. Now here's one it took me a long time to find, and I think it's pretty rare because it is a later release. This is the deluxe widescreen collector's edition release of Close Encounters of the Third Kind. This was the third and final cut Spielberg made in about 97 or so. This was later reissued on the first DVDs of Close Encounters, and then eventually in about 2005 or 6 they did the DVD with all three versions branched, and then the first Blu-ray with all three versions seamlessly branched. Now, this is now viewed as his preferred director's cut of the film, and it has some of the scenes from the theatrical version that were removed from the special edition, and then it has some scenes from the theatrical cut missing again, and it maintains some bits from the special edition, and then it's missing some bits from the special edition. So it's really, again, a completely third separate cut of the film. Of course, the infamous thing that is gone is the ending that they shot for the special edition, where you actually see inside the mothership, and that is absolutely deserving to be gone, and Spielberg admits it himself that it was a huge mistake to ever even begin to show what was inside there, and absolutely, it's one of the great mistakes in cinema history. So that's really the first thing and the most jarring thing that's going to be gone. Now, personally, I still prefer the original theatrical cut of the film. I think it was definitely by far the best and has the most realistic tone. I think the collector's edition that is the most common version played and seen these days kind of has a feeling of looking backwards, especially in how it deals with Roy and his relationship with his family, particularly his children. So I do think it kind of messes some with the original intent of the film. And, it was a project of its time. It is a 1977 release, not a 1997 release. So, all that aside, this is technically the best version on Laserdisc because it, like I said, it is a later pressing. It has a Dolby AC3 track in addition to a 2.0 surround mix. And this was reputedly mastered from the original 70mm Dolby mix, which is legendary for being extremely dynamic, particularly in the opening and in the finale, especially in the mothership scenes. Now, this is a really, really dynamic AC3 track. Again, if you pick this up, you're going to want to play the AC3 track over the surround track. It beats the pants off of it. But the surround track is still good. I actually like the surround tracks on the older releases. I love the surround track on the Criterion release of the theatrical version as well. But it's never been it's never, the original 70 millimeter mix has never been released untouched. A lot of people have, I've seen various reports online about when the special edition came out, there were a lot of people who were disappointed that the really impressive, hugely dynamic audio had been remixed for the special edition and didn't hit the same peak levels as the old mix. And they bemoan the fact that no home video version has come close to that original experience yet. So that's something interesting. I'd love to be able to sit down with original materials sometime and find out for myself, but that's never going to happen. So this was reported on LDB by Disclord as being mastered from the 70 millimeter audio. So that's why I really wanted to pick it up, even though I'm not a big fan of this cut of the film. But I was very, very impressed by the AC3 track. But if you're going to compare all the different versions, this isn't, one to go and pay top dollar for simply for the audio track, because you're going to get roughly the same performance out of the lossless tracks on the Blu-ray releases. And of course now there is the 4K release. The chapters are broken down right here, and then it goes into I don't really know if it's feature length, but it's very lengthy. It's almost as long as the Jaws documentary, so I'll go ahead and say it's close to feature length. Documentary by Laurent Bozarau. I can never pronounce his name right. I'm not even going to try. I'm probably going to butcher it. Anyway, so you get original production featurettes, trailers, and then the making of documentary, which also has many other materials in there. And this has all been replicated on the DVDs and Blu-rays. So again, there's nothing exclusive to this outside of the AC3 track perhaps being a different mix or having some more dynamics to it. And it's also the best technical transfer on Laserdisc, and the only time the third and final cut was released on Laserdisc. So it's really nice to have, but very, very uncommon. Like I said, this was pretty much ported for the first DVD release, so you can usually pick that up for like $1 or $2 if you're really, really interested. But again, I don't know if the audio track is going to be the same. You just get the discs in here. There's no inserts or anything. Not really a custom label, but I'll try to show the inside of all these. But the cover is really impressive. It's glossy printed, so it looks really, really nice and feels great in your hands. So again, a really nice presentation of the collector's edition cut of the film, and just a nice, rare, later Laserdisc box set for Close Encounters nerds like myself. Here is the Special Collector's Edition box set of E.T. This was the first box set from Universal. Later on, they did a box set as part of their, well, it's technically supposed to be part of their signature line, but I think it doesn't have all that printing on there. But anyway, so this was done in the late 80s. The other disc set is going to be much better in terms of transfer. It also comes with the soundtrack CD, which this does not. But it's a nice box. It's got the hinge style design like the Alien set, so you get used to that after a while. Nothing in here besides the disc. Pretty simple back. And if I'm not mistaken, I think this is I think it's fully CAV encoded, which is why it's spread across 5 sides. You do get a little bit of supplemental materials here. You get the original trailer, you get a little like production EPK kind of featurette thing, and some publicity stuff. So that's pretty nice for being of this era from Universal, because they usually wouldn't put any sort of special features on to save their lives. It was the movie and nothing else. But anyway, it's nice to see that they actually put something and gave some bit of extra effort to this, because I think E.T. was so big at the time that they kind of had to sell this box set as opposed to the standard release, which you can now pick up in any store for $1 or $2. It's a very common disc. Now, this one versus that one, you do get CAV encoding on here, so it's going to be a bit better. There have been some people who have said the audio track, the Dolby Surround encoding, is messed up on these older discs, and that the channels are inversed and they're actually flipped. in terms of left being right, right being left, and the surround decoding. At least if I read that correctly. I think it's a note on the actual LDDB information. I haven't watched this in a while. I got this pretty early on in collecting, so I've only watched it once. I'm never been the biggest ET person, so I'll have to spin this again and double check that. But from what I remember, it's a nice transfer, and you can usually, if you're lucky enough to find this, it's not going to cost you a lot like the later box set. The later box set will cost quite a bit more. I only paid a couple bucks for this, and the other one will easily cost you $20 or $30 still. So a nicer release for an earlier box set. Now here's one most everybody knows. The extremely common but still wonderful Jurassic Park box set, again from Universal, glossily printed, which is really, really nice. I'll show you the rear cover. Now, for being a box set, you'd think this would be a really stacked with extras, great release. You know, the film that premiered DTS, you think it would at least have an AC3 track. Oh, heck no, this is Universal. You're not going to get that. This has no AC3. This has no DTS. It is just a Dolby Surround digital track, ProLogic encoded, which is a really great track for the time period. It's not going to be as dynamic as the DTS original theatrical mix, which is not only extremely historically important for its design and for premiering the DTS system, but that is an insanely dynamic track. This presumably is from the 35mm Dolby SR optical audio track. So anyway, that 2.0 mix is presumably from the theatrical Dolby SR Printmaster. And of course, at this day and age, since Dolby SR or Dolby Stereo was still the predominant normal method for film sound reproduction in most theaters, they were still paying a lot of attention to making sure everything came across clearly in the Dolby Stereo Matrix surround track. It really wasn't until the mid-90s they started paying a lot more attention to the 5.1, because by that time more theaters had gone with either Dolby or DTS or even SDDS to a lesser extent. But anyway, so the 2.0 is still very important, and this is a very good Laserdisc that a lot of people know and is very common, and you can use it to test out your system with Matrix tracks. So anyway, very nice looking release. It's got this glossy cover, and of course if you look at the inside, it is a hinge box with just your disc shoved in here, no insert or anything. You do get the printing with the chapter listing actually on the hinge box here, so at least you do get some type of artwork on the inside. So I guess they did that instead of an insert, so at least you get that. I don't think there's anything on the back side, but just in case, let me double check. Oh, no, I take that back. There is this little taped insert, and I'll take that back. It is an actual insert in here. If I can pull this, yeah, it's actually a insert. Other Universal titles available of Steven Spielberg's. So, including, actually, pretty much most of these I've already covered in other videos. E.T. was either available in the standard version or the box set. There's Duel, Sugarland Express, the box set or standard edition of Jurassic Park, Chandler's List, Always, and then the 91 letterbox version of Jaws. And then on the back you get a listing of other MCA Universal Laserdiscs. So that's at least a nice little insert and a little bit of promo material that's still in here. The discs themselves are as plain as possible, and again, this set really has no special features to speak of. So it's again just the movie with CAV encoding and a ProLogic encoded Dolby track that was remixed from the original source. So super common. Don't pay a ton of money for this, but it's nice to have. It looks great. The picture quality is very good. It's not great, it's not top tier Laserdisc, but it's really good for the time period, and again you get that CAV encoding. So there are the later releases with 5.1 AC3 and DTS. Of course there are early DTS DVDs, and it's always debated on if any contain the theatrical audio mix, which Apparently they all have had some massaging and are not the original untouched track because that would be deemed too powerful for homes. So anyway, nice, very common box set. Nice to have in any collection, but don't let yourself get overcharged and actually pick one of these up. Now, moving on alphabetically from Spielberg, here is another MGM UA box that's pretty hard to come by. This is the box set of the Tarzan sequels, and it gets a little confusing because MGM first did their Tarzan films and did 6 of them, the last 4 of which are included in this set, and then the series moved over to RKO for a series of 6 further films, and all of these were much more aimed at the B market as program filler. They were done on cheaper budgets, but they did carry Johnny Weissmuller and several of the characters from these later films. So those are historically important. Some are still a good deal of fun. But anyway, I do feel these films really are underrated. And if you go back and watch these, especially in succession, yes, they do have some repetition of stock footage. No, they aren't perfect, and they get cheaper, more cheaply made as they go along. But I do think they kind of have a lot in common with the way MGM did the ongoing Thin Man series, which also had 6 films and also ran over an extended time period after 2 really good films in the early 30s kind of got the thing kickstarted. So anyway, I was really excited and happy to find this because unfortunately all the Tarzan films have gone out of print. They came out on DVD and essentially recycling all the old Laserdisc transfers, and it had an extra documentary, but no other real special features, and those have gone out of print. At least you can get the Laserdiscs of the MGM ones. The RKO ones were never released until DVD, and now those are out of print as well, which is ridiculous why they and they also let the Thin Mans go out of print. So I don't know why Warner Brothers decided to do that, but that's silly. These really deserve Blu-ray treatment. So the box is pretty nice. It's got an actual kind of nice repetition of the typeface on the front to kind of give it that sort of, I guess, for lack of a better term, jungle look. Now you'll notice the front cover replicates the same artwork from the restored release of the original film Tarzan the Ape Man, which was in my series shelf, because for some reason this box set only has the 4 sequels and does not have the first 2 films that are the most famous and what most people remember. The second film was released first in the late 80s, and that was the premiere of the longer uncut version that had all of the little bits that were cut out by the code, the production code, put back in, including the infamous nude swim, where Tarzan and Jane go for a swim and Jane is actually swimming nude. So if you see that and wonder how they got past the code, it didn't, but they finally found those pieces and put them back in. And then this box set came out in about 93 or so, and it's really well put together. It has a nice bit of promotional MGM materials from the time period ahead of each film, and they have their trailers on here. And the transfers are all really great, and like I said, they were recycled for the respective DVDs. So you can actually find this Laserdisc set for far, far, far cheaper than the mostly bare bones DVD set, which goes for a lot of money because they just let it go out of print for some reason. So, and it was really fun to go back and rewatch all of these. So definitely highly recommended. Really nice transfers. All have their original mono soundtracks digitally PCM encoded. So that's another bonus. And then if you want the original, it came out last in '95 for the remastered version. So you'll have to pick up this box set and then the first 2 films separately to have the entire run of the first MGM 6-film Tarzan series. And as I mentioned before, unfortunately, the 6 RKO films never came out on Laserdisc, at least as far as I know. They're not on the LDB. I've not even seen that they really had much of a VHS release. So I think it may have been due to perhaps some rights issues, or I know they were played a lot on television, and a lot of kids saw them that way, but I don't know why they just never really appeared on video until the out-of-print DVDs. Open this up. It does have a nice custom insert, kind of like a lot of these other MGM UA releases. And the back gives you the credits with a nice rendering of publicity stills from the time period. I do like how MGM would do this and kind of give a color sheen to it and just make a really nice 12-inch Laserdisc sized insert image. And the original lobby car posters there. And here you actually get a nice bit of text about the importance of these Tarzan sequels. And then you get the chapter breakdowns, which is nicely broken up with the film titles actually kind of large, so you can actually keep up with which film is which. Especially since all the films are Tarzan something or another, it's very easy to mix up which film is which. And especially since the, well, no, actually this one is roughly broken up into one film per disc. And of course, being a box set, they kind of would use the end of some sides, but it's not as bad as some others. They kind of used a lot of the extras at the beginning to kind of help break it up onto one film per disc, which is really, really nice. It's always kind of frustrating when you're watching one film or you're trying to get to the start of another one and it's on the back side of one movie disc and you have to flip around to like side 6, 7, or 8 to get to the start of whatever movie you're trying to pull up in a box set. But still, this is just a really nice set. It's not too common. I was very happy to find it. Again, it's just the standard MGM sleeves inside here. But it's a thicker box because there's more discs in here, so you can usually find it in good shape. But again, it's not too common. You'll probably have to pay a little bit more than most sets for it. But again, you're going to be spending far less than the DVD set of the Tarzans, and you get PCM mono as opposed to lossy mono on the DVDs. So really, really nice release and highly recommended. I really think the Tarzans are extremely underrated. They're far better than I remembered. Next we have the anniversary reissue box set of the Ten Commandments. This was done for the 35th anniversary. It was done off of a new widescreen restoration in the early 90s. It also, in addition to doing color work, it did work in the sound area, and this premiered a brand new Dolby Surround encoded mix of the film. It's actually a pretty nice transfer. It's of course going to supersede the older Laserdisc, which, if I remember correctly, was pan and scan. Unfortunately, starting with this release, the film's original mono track really kind of got lost, and I'd like to pick up the older release and see if that has the mono, or see if I can find that somewhere, because every time I watch this, the various remixes kind of get a little distracting. At least to me. It's not a huge deal. It's not as bad as some others, but again, I just wish they wouldn't lose the original track. Now the box set itself is quite nice, even though it is rather simple. Everything's kind of embossed here in gold, which looks nice, and they went with red for some reason. Yeah, I don't know why. I would think they would have gone with like gray or brown for the stone tablets, or blue to go with. Of course, they're going to use the parting of the Red Sea on the front, but you know, it's striking and it works. And they kind of gave this sort of marbled, weathered texture in the picture, but the box itself is just flat glossy. Over on the back, it gives you just a simple description of the film and a little bit about how this is a brand new transfer. And you know, you get the Paramount information here, but it's pretty simple and straightforward. This box set really isn't a big drawn out affair. When you open it up, you get a printed insert attached to the top box lid. Again, a little bit more about the film, its importance, and how many, you know, the large scale of the production, which was one of the largest ever made at the time. And then about its extreme box office success. You know, inflation adjusted, Ten Commandments is still one of the most successful films ever made. And then it goes into the chapter breakdown. The film is spread across, I think it just makes it over onto, yeah, it's on 5 sides. The last 2 sides are CAV encoded, so you get the parting of the Red Sea in CAV for us CAV nerds who like to still frame special effects sequences. Side 6 gives you a little bit of special features. You basically get the trailer, some reissue trailers, and some trailers of other DeMille films. So that's really all you're going to get in terms of special features. The DVD has a fantastic feature-length commentary that's been replicated on the Blu-rays. So that's an absolute must if you're interested in the film. It's a huge mammoth commentary. There are also documentary pieces. And of course, all this has been superseded now by the fantastic Paramount restoration that's available on Blu-ray, which is a stunning 6K scan of the original negative. with some just beautiful results. But again, it does not have the film's original audio track, which pretty much no release does unless you go back to the really, really old ones. So anyway, this is just, again, another representation of what restorations look like back in the photochemical days and how they would look when transferred to the home in their best possible format, which was at the time Laserdisc. Now, the discs are just put in here. They're standard Paramount discs, and I'm going to check. I don't know if there's another insert on the back. Let me see. I think, yeah. All that is here is just another printing of the actual production credits for Ten Commandments. So, again, not anything special, but at least they put something on the back. I would have thought they would have had maybe an insert or something else in here, but it's, like I said before, it's a pretty simple, straightforward box set, and it's not super expensive. You can usually find it if you're really, trying to track this one down. But again, just keep in mind, it's been far outclassed by the DVD and the new HD restoration. But, it is going to look a little bit different compared to this because this is still a photochemical-based restoration. And it was the first time you could see the film with a Dolby Surround encoded track. So, everyone on YouTube is thrilled watching me struggle to try and get the plastic back off of something. You get 1 million subscribers doing this. It's like the ultimate unboxing video. Unboxing something that's been sealed for far too long and trying to keep it preserved. Yay, said nobody. Alright, so next up is a really nice one. I never really intended to pick this up because it usually went for a lot of money, but this is the deluxe edition of They Shoot Horses, Don't They?, which is one of the few Fox titles that was offered in a limited box that was actually autographed and numbered by the director. This one is, of course, Sidney Pollack, and this was a attempt to clean up the film and restore it as best as they could at the time, because they found that, I think they went to try and get a print or get a new print made, and there was just no good material to use, and that really upset Pollack and a lot of other people, and so they did their best to try and make a good new version to actually have the film available again. They recorded a commentary for this release and made some extras which were then unavailable. I think the film finally got released on DVD, and it was pretty much a port of this, and but it didn't have the Laserdisc extras. So this Laserdisc was very important for a long time until I think it was this past year. It was finally released on Blu-ray by Kino Lorber, and they replicated, I think, most of the stuff on here in terms of the extras and the commentary. So now this Laserdisc really isn't as important, but again, it's just not common to find, and I actually found this one still sealed. So it was really nice to pick up, because I've always been a fan of Pollack. I always thought he was a very underrated director. And like I said, these were just not common. This was only numbered to 2,500 copies. And just for you folks out there, here's the original wrapper with the Tower Records stickers still on here for $129, and then the sale marker of $99.98. So that's just a nice throwback. Now let me show you the rear cover here. It's another Fox hinge box, so it's not any special term. It's not special in terms of packaging, but you can tell, this is kind of like what they did with the MGM-UA box for New York, where a lot of attention to care and detail went into it, and of course they were working with the film's original director and some of the production crew. You'll notice that you actually have the 20th Century Fox Home Entertainment logo on here, so this is when they were starting to change over from CBS Fox, which for some reason is still on here, even though this is 93, so that's kind of when you would get both logos on there. Actually, maybe 94, closer to 94, something like that. Anyway, it was the early 90s. You get a printing with some basic background info on the film. Its nominations for Oscars in '69, and then you get the list of special features, the commentary by Sidney Pollack. Then there's another commentary on Analog Track 2 with various members of the cast and crew. You get an original featurette made during the production, the original trailer, and then archival still galleries with everything from on-set photos to lobby cards, and then You get the musical continuity notes from the composer, and notes and pictures, and just everything that Pollock still had in his own shooting script from his own archives. So again, just a really, really nice release where they obviously put a lot of time and care and attention to detail into it. Now, in terms of the transfer, it's actually very good. The audio is a stereo track. It is actually, I don't think it is Dolby Surround encoded, because this is, of course, 1969. And actually, I think the film's actually mono. I don't know why it says stereo on here. I don't think they remixed it. It's mono as far as I remember, but it's been a little while since I watched this particular set. Again, if you've seen the DVD, you've seen the transfer they used for this. And the Kino Blu-ray is also not super, super different. So, hinge type box here. You get this really nice insert, which really sets up the tone of the film very well, I think. Yeah. This one's so small, it kind of just wants to hang open, so I'm going to show you this. So I can show you this. Beautiful, beautiful amount of notes. And then, of course, the bottom has a little paragraph about the main cast and crew. But again, very, very copious notes about the film and its release and reception. So really, really nicely done. And I love the design theme that kind of stays with the time period setting of the film. I think very, very well. Kind of the off gold. Here you have the chapter listing. The film is spread across 3 sides, with side 3 ending in the supplemental section. You get the disc production credits and then the restoration credits. It was pretty much handled by Michael Eric, and the lab services were done at YCM Labs, who pretty much did all of the major 90s restorative work in the analog and film domain. So you'll recognize that name very, very quickly if you've seen a lot of these 90s restorations. So again, just a really, really well done release that unfortunately didn't get replicated on DVD. But at least the film is available once again. Now, the discs themselves are just plain. You get a brown Fox label, but other than that, they're just standard. Let's see, I don't think there's anything else in here in terms of extra special content. Yeah. Although for some reason they put the cheap crummy sleeves in here and then actually included normal polyline sleeves underneath it, I guess to pad out the box. Why, I don't know. I don't know why they wouldn't have just used those, but that's just how it came. I didn't do that, so I mean, at least they included them. It's nice. I don't know why they put them in the crappy sleeves to begin with, but again, just a really, really nice release. Definitely pick it up if you find it. Normally this goes for a lot of money. It's not very common. And like I said, this is limited to 2,500 copies. So just a really nice release of kind of a forgotten film from a very underrated director. Of course, I mentioned this a minute ago with the Tarzan box, and this is very similar in a lot of regards. This is the MGM UA release of the Thin Man series. And unlike the Tarzan set, this actually includes all 6 films. So all 6, including the original, are included here. They all have really nice transfers from good elements, and they all have the original mono tracks as digital PCM. And just like the Tarzan films, the DVDs are out of print and pretty much recycle the same source transfer that was used for the Laserdisc. In fact, when I compared them, they look just like the Tarzans. They seemed almost identical. So since the DVDs are out of print and go for high prices now, and just like the Tarzans, they really only have a extra disc with a small documentary, and the movies themselves don't really have much in the extras department. You can save a lot of money by just tracking down this one Laserdisc box set, which actually is not very expensive, but just like the Tarzans, it's not very common. So this is definitely recommended. All of these films are wonderful. I'd argue the first 2 are all-time classics, and the other 4 are also just incredible. This is just, the phrase, they don't make them like this anymore, if it applies to anything, it's the Thin Man's. The back is pretty simple. You get a nice pictorial representation of all of the 6 films and a little blurb about the series and Nick and Nora. MGM credits at the bottom. And then it's very stacked in terms of discs. So this is the definitely the biggest contender I have for a box set that's going to fly open, because as you see, the discs are packed so tightly in here that they're kind of overflowing, and they'll just push the top off. Now the insert is nicely glued in here in the top. You get each film laid out with a small paragraph kind of reminding you which film is which, because like the Tarzans, it's very easy to mix them up because the titles are so similar. And you can kind of keep the order straight this way. And then you get the little production credit for each, and each nicely has a set publicity photograph that kind of identifies each film, so that also helps. And again, always need more Nick and Nora on the bottom. The discs themselves are standard MGM labels. The Thin Man got released earlier as a analog only disc, if I remember correctly, and so this replaces that with a much better transfer and with digital sound. I don't think any of these sequels got a release earlier before this box set. The second one may have, and of course they all came out on VHS, but this is really what you're going to want to go for. And like I said, the DVDs pretty much just replicate this set entirely in 480p. Now here on the bottom, you get the chapter listing for each film. The whole set is spread across 12 sides, and at the end of side 12, the end of the final film, Song of the Thin Man, it then goes into a trailer gallery which has one theatrical trailer for each of the films in succession, which is really nice, because a lot of times, you know, if they had a trailer, they might stick it on there, or they might stick on a couple trailers for a box set, but, you know, certainly you wouldn't think they'd have all 6 on here, but they do, and that's a really nice touch, because that's all you get in terms of special features. But it was just really nice to finally have all the sequels available. So like I said, it's not special in terms of, you know, what you're going to be able to get in here, but since the DVDs are out of print and exorbitantly expensive and use pretty much the same transfers, you can get this box set usually for far less than $20, and it has PCM sound, whereas the DVDs will have lossy Dolby Digital. And the DVD of The Thin Man is a very early DVD that itself is not encoded very well, so the Laserdisc again is a cheaper, much more viable and better sounding alternative. Plus you get this beautiful little box set, well, beautiful large box set to then put on yourself, and every time you pull it out, the top's going to want to go flying off. But still, absolutely recommended, essential, and since the DVDs are so hard to find, this is really the best version you can get of this series this day and age, in this day and age. And it's unbelievable they haven't made it to Blu-ray yet, and hopefully the Warner Archive corrects that for this and the Tarzan series. Alright, last but not least, this is a pretty common box. This is the Special Collector's Edition box set of The War of the Roses from Fox. It's a later release, hence the Fox Video updated logo on the bottom. Beautifully done. I love the typeface used. I love the imagery over a black background with the red border. It's embossed. It really jumps out to the eye. This one a lot of people will have because it's so common, and it's just a simple, yet another hinge box from Fox. I didn't mean to rhyme. It's a little beat up, but it was literally super cheap, so I figured why not. Now, you do get a little bit of special features, and of course in here they have listed that it's in widescreen and it has Dolby Surround, which really aren't special features, but we'll go with it, it's okay. So again, letterbox with a Dolby Surround encoded track, presumably the original audio. It does have production stills, stills of the poster and art campaign, storyboards, some elements of the shooting script in addition to the trailer, and then it has a small gallery of some deleted scenes, and then it has a video introduction from Danny DeVito in addition to a commentary on Analog Track 1. So that's really what makes this a special edition. The box itself really is not anything special. It's just a hinge box. You do get an insert, So at least they give you that. So other than that, it's pretty much like the Alien and Aliens box, where it's like a small bit of supplementals for what would otherwise be a normal Laserdisc release and just a standard gatefold. But the jacket's pretty good. Gives you some nice imagery and text about the film, and then the chapter listing. So, like I said, this would have normally just been a normal 2-disc release because the film just makes it onto 3 sides, but I guess somebody decided to give it the box treatment when they added the commentary and little bit of extras at the end of side 3. So a nicer than normal release. I don't know if it really necessitated the box set, but you know, if they're going to make a box set, you know, who's to say no? So standard Fox sleeves on a foam back. Yeah, and that's it in here. So, like I said, not really super special or anything. Pretty common, but you know, just a nice looking release. It has the original soundtrack and PCM, and you know, it has some deleted materials, has a commentary. So, of course, it's come out on DVD since, and I haven't heard. I don't know if that replicates all the content on here, but since this is so dirt cheap, it's a Laserdisc box set that you can get for nothing. Why wouldn't you? So anyway, that's going to do it for the box set shelf. That gets me to the end of the alphabet. So I'm going to continue on the series with my Criterions, and then the handful of Rome discs that I have, and then I'm going to end with my Bond discs and my Star Wars titles, and then I'll do a short series with all of the discs that I've accumulated since I started doing these videos. So hope you enjoyed this. Hope it gave you some insight, or you know, you saw some boxes that you've really been interested in and just couldn't find. And it's just really interesting to go back and look at these, because this is a level of packaging, art, and design that we're just never going to see again in the declining state of physical media.